I'm Lieutenant General Michael T. Flynn. If you just type his rank and name into any search engine, you see all kinds of things. Head of Pentagon Intelligence Agency forced out, officials say, from the Washington Post. A curveball in Trump's Veep search. Seriously considering retired Lieutenant General Michael T. Flynn. Flynn's last interview, iconoclast departs DIA, that's the Defense Intelligence Agency, with a warning. Controversial Army general rumored to be on Trump's VP list. On and on and on and on. He is, well, let me tell you about he is well qualified to write and publish a book. It is titled The Field of Fight, How We Can Win the Global War Against Radical Islam and Its Allies. Came out the 12th of last month, that would be July. And he served as director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, commander of the Joint Functional Component Command for Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance, and chair of the Military Intelligence Board from July 24, 2012 to August 2, 2014. Prior to that, he served as assistant director of national intelligence. He consistently pushed for greater information and intelligence sharing and was a leading figure in coalition and special operations intelligence operations. General Flynn co-authored a report in January 2010 through the Center for a New American Security entitled Fixing Intel, a blueprint for making intelligence relevant in Afghanistan, which criticized the intelligence community for lacking an understanding of the human socio-context of the battlefield in Afghanistan. His military career was primarily operational, with numerous combat arms, conventional and special operations senior intelligence assignments. He also served as the senior intelligence officer for the Joint Special Operations Command, sometimes known as JSOC, where he was credited with creating innovative techniques for interrogation operations and in operations intelligence fusion, leading to major breakthroughs in counterterrorism operations in Iraq, Afghanistan, and elsewhere against al-Qaeda and its associated movements. He is a published author, as I mentioned in his book, articles appearing in Small Wars Journal, Military Review, Joint Forces Quarterly, the Center for a New American Security, and other military and intelligence publications. In May 2016, he emerged as one of several leading possible choices as vice presidential running mate for Republican nominee Donald Trump. However, he was ultimately passed over for Indiana Governor Mike Pence. But he spoke on U.S. leadership and American exceptionalism at the 2016 Republican National Convention in Cleveland. Welcome, General. It's so good to have you with us. Thank you for being here.
Well, thanks so much there, John B. Wells, and I really appreciate you having me on and being able to talk to your great listeners.
General Flynn, let me ask you something. Let me just come right out of the chute with this one. This presidential election, this now these are my words, not yours, and just I can take a trim, and if I've got one, especially from a general, okay? But it's like you have a morally bankrupt, in my opinion, Democratic candidate in Hillary Clinton, who, if not convicted and or at least charged, has been linked to all kinds of nefarious activity. Supposedly a professed lesbian woman and married to an impeached president, a known rapist and predator, a visitor to Jeffrey Epstein's fantasy island and all this stuff. This foundation money that pours in from all over the world. And now, recently, it has been alleged that now Russia has 20% of our uranium deposits through a deal brokered largely by Secretary Madam Clinton, let's just call her that. What's wrong with this picture, General? Is this the very best that the other side, the Democrats, can do? I mean, how is this even possible?
I think, John, for your listeners, and what this really shows is it shows an organization that I describe as the Clinton machine that has taken over a part of our country, and you have the incumbency of Barack Obama, who actually is in fact behind it, supporting it, to continue our country down this path towards socialism. And these are people who are they are enormously power hungry, and when they say that they care about the national security or they care about the direction of our country, well, actually what they care about is staying in power. And they care about taking this country down a path that is a path, again, towards socialism. And that's what you're seeing. I mean, when you look at the amount of times that she has lied, been blatantly caught lying, and to include even just this past weekend here, where she was on one of the major media outlets in the United States here, where she lied again To me, it's unbelievable. But all that said, this is why this election that's coming up in a few months from now in November is so critical to our country. And people need to really look at what direction do they want this country to go. If people want it to go down the path of socialism, where you have a political class that is so power hungry and care only about themselves and staying in power, then you know what? Then be my guest. But that's not the direction that I want to see this country. Our country is having some problems right now, to say the least. And I would just tell you that we're looking at a level of corruption in our country right now, in our political system, in our country. I mean, John, just look at what just came out with the release of these emails prior to the Democratic National Convention that showed a level of corruption that actually rigged the Democratic primary to beat Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders would have likely had won had they not been rigged, had those elections not been rigged. And they were rigged to benefit Hillary Clinton, to keep her and the machine around her in power. I mean, that's just an unbelievable level of corruption that you would only, I've seen it in third world countries, in many of the places that I've seen around the world in my days in the military. So this is third world behavior by one of our major parties, by somebody who wants to be the next president of the United States, who should otherwise be in jail right now. If I did a tenth of what she did in terms of disclosing classified intelligence that she's already been described by the FBI director as having done, I'd be in jail right now. So this country has a big decision to make, and this is not one to sit out. This is not an election to sit out. And I talked about that when I talked about American exceptionalism and American leadership. This is one where the country needs to wake up and really take a hard look at what direction do we want this country to go in. I don't want it to go. I don't want any Clintons around our White House. I want none of that anymore. I'm sick of it. I think the country's had enough of it, and that's why I think that there's so much attraction to Donald Trump, who represents bold, fresh leadership, and sort of a new idea that keeps us on the track that we should be on, which is based on our Constitution. And I could go on and on, John. Let me say one other thing, and I'll stop.
No, it's all right.
But what your audience, and this is what I tell people around the United States, we should not fear what our country was built upon. Our country was built upon a Judeo-Christian set of values, principles, and morals. And we should not feel like we have to apologize for that. We should feel we should feel emboldened by what our country was built upon, and we should be proud of that fact. And we should talk about it publicly and not be around the world apologizing for who we are, which is what our current president does. And frankly, there'll be more of the same if we have Hillary Clinton as the president. So this is where a guy like me is at, and why I'm sitting here having this conversation with you, John, is because I looked at the direction that America was taking. I saw while I was in uniform, and I was very adamant in uniform in my advising those that I was able to talk to, and very in very blunt terms, but they didn't like it. They didn't like to hear the truth. But I'm telling you that as I step out and I'm sitting here today with you, I am telling your listeners that while in uniform, I saw and I heard this White House lie to the American people multiple times. And now that I'm out, I've decided I'm going to serve this country in a different way. And I've decided I'm going to serve it in the way that I am, which is basically being a voice, hopefully, of integrity and honesty for some of the things that are going on within our government and frankly around the world, because our country must get itself back on track. It doesn't mean going back in time. It means getting on a track that keeps us on the track that our Constitution essentially says is the direction that we need to go. And then we can make adjustments from there, but not towards socialism, which is the direction that we're heading.
It's amazing that Bernie Sanders threw his hat into Hillary's ring now.
Yeah, I felt bad for him, actually. I think he just gave up. I just honestly think that, and you could see it in his face during the Democratic convention. You could hear it in his voice. I mean, it was like he just said, you know what? I give up. I can't fight this corruption anymore. This is, like he said during the whole primary campaign, the system is rigged. And guess what, Bernie? It was rigged against you from the beginning by your own party that you were trying to, you were actually trying to uplift. So, I mean, all the people that supported Bernie Sanders should feel disgusted, highly, highly disgusted with the way not only Bernie Sanders was treated, but the millions of people that came out to vote for Bernie Sanders because he had, you know, actually, I didn't agree with the direction he wanted to take the country, but Bernie Sanders was being honest. He was being honest in his own beliefs and his own feelings about what he wanted, and he wanted to move away from the greed and the corruption that existed. And what happened was that greed and corruption turned against him in his own party, and they caused him to fail. And I think Bernie Sanders just said, you know, to hell with it. I'm done. I can't fight this. This is so bad. I don't even want to fight it anymore. And that's kind of where we are.
You know, CIA, we think we know what they do. NSA, several decades ago, the only thing I ever heard about NSA was that they intercepted international transmissions. And I suspect that there are some free-thinking individuals who are aware, like yourself, inside many of these agencies. I tell people all the time, look, you can't slam everybody in these agencies. There are good people working CIA and all these various departments. What do you think the chances are, and we don't have to get into this if you don't want to, but what do you think the chances are that it wasn't the Russians at all that did any hacking into Clinton's server? I wonder if NSA somewhere has those emails on file, and I wonder if maybe it's somebody on the inside that didn't say, take a look at these.
Yeah. So a couple of things here, John. First, there are some great Americans who work inside of our government, both in our military and in our civilian system. And I know that many of them are frustrated. Many of them are frustrated with just the sheer bureaucracy that they have to deal with. And so they don't, you know, some fight it, some don't. On your specific question, though, what Hillary Clinton did as the Secretary of State by traveling around with so I'm going to say things that the FBI director said. So she had multiple devices. She knowingly had classified information on an unclassified system. She used a quote unquote private system for government purposes. So in what I know and what I know to be true, that private system, once it started to be used for government purposes, is no longer a private system. It is now property of the United States government, especially at the level that she was at. So I know that what she did during her time as Secretary of State and the way she operated, it was like handing a filet mignon on a silver platter to the Russians and the Chinese, all that information. Because trust me, I'm a guy that actually did that kind of work in the earlier days of my career, where we were trying to steal secrets from our adversaries. And that was, they didn't even have to steal it from her. She was giving it to them.
Right.
So now on the issue of these emails, these 30,000 that are still who knows where they are. Trust me, somebody has those emails, and you're gonna see the light. They will see the light of day eventually. And whether it's a foreign adversary or whether it's somebody who's inside the system that is just disgusted with the way she's getting away with so much disclosure of classified information. Believe me, there's a lot of people in our government who hold security clearances, who see holding a security clearance as an absolute privilege, and work their tails off to make sure that they don't have any of these, an inadvertent disclosure or something that's done by mistake, where she was just doing it blatantly. So we don't know. This latest thing on the Democratic National Convention disclosure, that was all that noise about Russia did it. That was a deflection by the Clinton machine to basically move off of the idea that they were so corrupt against themselves inside of their own party. The system was so rigged. So the big question is, does somebody have more emails? Does somebody have the 30,000? The likelihood of that, and I'm sitting here today with you and your listeners, the likelihood that somebody has all of those emails at a nation state level, meaning Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, or even other countries, or some other large hacktivist group like the like the WikiLeaks group that we know exists, the likelihood is very high. And I'm talking like better than 95%. And I would actually bet a paycheck on it that they have it, that somebody has it. To include somebody inside of our own system who just is so disgusted with what they're seeing in our political system right now.
Vladimir Putin, what do you make of him? Good guy, bad guy, trouble? Can we do business with him? Is he the totalitarian inclined individual that some say he is? I get both sides. He's a good guy. He's a master statesman. I personally think he's a superb statesman. But
yeah, he's a great. Yeah, he's a master statesman. He's a master. We've had people in our own government call him, well, he's tactical. No, he's very strategic, and he's a master. Sort of strategic chess player on the world stage, and so what is he? And I describe Russia in my book actually, and I take them on because they are part of in the subtitle of the book, and its allies. Those allies I describe, and Russia is one of those allies to radical Islamism. And you kind of say, well, why would they be an ally to radical Islamism, a problem that they have in their own country? So in terms of Putin is a guy who he does not have any respect for the United States leadership. He's got a lot of respect for the U.S., but he doesn't have any respect for our current leadership. And what has to be renewed is a sense of respect, mutual respect between a guy who's essentially he runs Russia like a dictatorship versus a country like ours that runs as a republic. And what he wants to have is a sense of respect so we can have, a different conversation instead of us going over there and looking like fools with the whole Russian reset thing that Hillary Clinton got us involved in that completely failed. And your listeners need to understand that we have worked with Russia on mutual interests over our history. Going way back, way back in our own history, even before World War II. But, always remind people that we worked with Russia during World War II to defeat Nazism. Now, then it changed on us for 40 years after the Nazis were defeated. And we had the Cold War where we fought, in a way, we fought communism and we defeated communism. We defeated that notion, and the Cold War, ended in a sort of a victory for us. The Soviet Union collapsed. And now we have this rise of radical Islamism. And we're into the second decade of the 21st century. So what we have to do is we have to have a different conversation with Vladimir Putin. And this is not one, trying to be buddy-buddy, because I'm not trying to be buddy-buddy with anybody. I am very selfish about our own country and our own self-interest. But they have some of their own self-interest that we must look at. How do we work together on? So one of my things, and I went over to Russia and I actually talked to the Russian people through their media venues, and I basically said, look, because of Russia's relationship with Iran, Russia needs to get Iran to back out of the 4 proxy wars that they are currently involved in the Middle East right now. And only Russia can do that. Yet, when you think about it, John, we did a deal where Russia was part of at the table. We did a deal with Iran to give Iran a pathway to nuclear weapon development over the next decade and $150 billion to boot. So when people go, well, we can't deal with Russia, they're our enemy. Yeah, they're our enemy in some cases. They're our adversary. They're our competitor. But when we talk about the rise of radical Islamism, this is a place where I think we can sit down and say, okay, look, I got it. We got some other issues, and we're going to deal with these issues. America has to be able to juggle multiple strategic balls at the same time. Right now, we're not able to do that. We're not doing that well at all. And one of those strategic balls is the defeat of radical Islamism. While we continue to sort of check some of these other actions that Vladimir Putin is involved in, and those actions are Eastern Europe. They're some of the potential things that they might be doing in Turkey. It's relationships that Russia has with China right now. It's a whole range of issues that we must be thinking about and we must be conscious of. But our current administration is looking at each event as a single stovepiped issue instead of being able to actually juggle the multiple strategic balls that are in the air. And this is the kind of conversation that we got to have with Putin, not some very narrow, hey, we've got to work on this very narrow tactical issue with Iran, which was a terrible deal. I mean, God, that has put our nation at high risk, and certainly the nation of Israel. I mean, you know, they look like they lost a big friend in the United States with that deal, and they did.
Would you just make something clear for us so that we can fully digest what you're saying? What is the chief difference between strategy and tactics? Is strategy the overall thing and tactics the mechanism, or what?
Yeah, that's a good point and good question. So tactics is the, you know, sort of the day in and day out way you do things. You know, like, so for example, and what's recent in the news is we're dropping bombs in Libya. That is a tactical action that has really no end state or end goal in mind, other than to kill some guys on the ground that we might have discovered, we might have found. So, you know, the strategic question in play is, so to what end, that has to be asked, to what end do these tactics of killing this guy, killing that guy, fighting in Fallujah, fighting in Ramadi, what's the end game that we're trying to actually achieve? And it's not just defeat ISIS, that's actually not a strategy, the defeat of ISIS. It's the defeat of radical Islamism. And how do we do that? So you've got to bring these other larger capabilities and tools that the United States has, and those are diplomatic tools, tough diplomatic tools. Those are personal relationships that we have with other countries. Those are informational and economic strengths that we can still bring to bear, although our economy is lethargic right now. Those are strategic issues that we must bring together in a more comprehensive package, instead of what we're getting out of the current White House, which is tactics, meaning fight in Ramadi, fight in Fallujah, fight here, drop a bomb here, drop a bomb there. You know, tell us some other thing about some other, you know, high value target, some other senior leader of Al Qaeda or ISIS that we just killed. That is actually not getting us anywhere. What you're seeing is the rise of radical Islamism being led by an organization that actually has a strategic campaign plan that is global. And you're seeing them act on a global stage, and they're actually executing a very strategic campaign plan that we actually know what it is, because we've captured it a couple of times, actually. What I would like us to see, and what I would like our president, this current president, to do, but he won't. I would like him to say, look, we have not had a working strategy. I'm going to change our strategy. I'm going to change the leadership that's actually executing it. And we're going to go after this in a much different way. And I don't think we're going to get that out of this president. This president, all he wants right now is not to have another attack in our country. He wants to keep showing that we're doing things. So drop some bombs in Libya, again, to what end? And I think that it's very dangerous, because all it does is it gives our enemy more time.
How dare I ask this question, but what do you make of that whole Benghazi deal? First time I saw it, I said, that's a gun deal that went bad, is what that is. They even brought their little flag. This looks like some sort of a staged event. I'm not comfortable with this.
Yeah, what I would say, because I was deposed to speak to the Benghazi Commission for 4.5 hours, so I'd be, because of what I know. But here's what I'm going to tell you. The lack of honesty by our government at the federal level, lack of honesty, so the dishonesty that I have witnessed is one of the major reasons why I'm sitting here talking to you today there, John B. Wells, because I am sick of it. I'm sick of the lack of honesty. I want our government to tell the people the truth. If we again, I don't want to apologize around the world. I want us to be that big old shining bright light on the hill that you always heard about. But that bulb ain't burning so hot these days. I want honesty, and the dishonesty, and the calculated dishonesty coming out of our current administration is just unreal. And so that's why we need big change. And frankly, if we don't do this, folks, for your listeners, if this doesn't happen, if people think that, oh no, we're going to, I'd rather go with Hillary Clinton, then you know what? And you vote for her? I mean, oh my God. I mean, you're talking about a person who doesn't know the difference between lying and the truth. And frankly, our government has kind of done the same thing. I don't want to throw my hands up. And so as a guy who cares deeply about this country, has spent my adult life, in the military and service to it, I can't be outside, in the bleachers somewhere, in the sort of the proverbial bleachers, griping about things. That's why I'm involved in the way I am, because I just have had enough. And I think that many people in this country are fed up with a lot of what they're seeing. And frankly, it's just the dishonesty. I mean, stop it. Just stop the dishonesty. But you're seeing a component of our country, of our political class, that actually they're not stopping it. They are continuing this message, and it's actually hurting our country.
I remember that John Wayne picture. Remember Flying Tigers, when that Japanese fight, real deadly guy, thought he was funny, and he'd say, "Where are you gangsters?" Is that? I'm beginning to wonder if the rest of the world doesn't regard the United States as you gangsters.
Yeah, and the rest of the world doesn't want to look at the U.S. like that, but the rest of the world is looking at what's going on in our political discourse right now, and wondering if America is still the country that they've always thought it to be. And I think that people are questioning that. People around the world are questioning that. Now, I will tell you that there's a lot of other countries around the world that have some real serious problems. I mean, Europe is having some incredible problems. This whole Brexit thing that just happened with Great Britain basically exiting the European Union. There's 5 countries right now in the European Union that are considering exiting as well. And I think one of those countries is France. So there's some other countries out there with some very serious problems and doing some very serious soul searching. At this point in time, what I want is I want us, the United States of America, to be selfish about ourselves right now. And right now being the next, maybe the next 10 years or so, because we have got to get our house in order. Our economy is struggling. It's definitely struggling. And it can be stronger. The debt that we have is for real. I mean, and your listeners are going to be like, well, he's a military guy, an intelligence guy. Hey, I had to deal with a lot of things at the levels that I was at, and one of them was the effects and the impacts of our economy on the world, and then how other countries, other adversaries that we have, are trying to take advantage of weaknesses in our own system. So I had to do things like I had to study the national security strategies of our biggest adversaries, and also in many cases I would read elements of their, quote unquote, their constitutions to understand, because it was my responsibility to know what our enemies, our competitors were thinking about, were doing against us. And so what I'm telling you is that we have some soul searching to do in this country to get our collective house in order. And that's why I think Donald Trump is resonating with so many people, because he's basically talking about, when he says, "Make America Great Again," that's not a slogan. That's a vision. That's a vision for this country. And when people on the Democratic side, and Hillary Clinton says, "Oh, no, we're great." Hey, we are a damn good country. We're a great country. But we're struggling right now in many, many ways. I mean, I put out not too long ago, you mentioned all the stuff if you Google me, I wrote an article not too long ago, only a couple months ago, that basically the title of the article was "America Has Forgotten How to Win Its Wars." And it's because of some of the dumb decisions that we make politically. It's not because our military can't win them. It's not because our intelligence system doesn't work. It's because our political leadership, they don't know what they're doing. I mean, these are people that don't know what they're doing. So this is the kind of change that I think our country needs right now. And this is why we need to make America great again. And frankly, part of that, a subset to that, is making America safe again. Yeah. Because of the attack on our own rule of law in this country. I mean, Jesus, look at what's just happened with the targeting, the direct targeting of police officers, here in our communities in our country. That's an assault on every single one of us. That's an attack on every single American, every single law-abiding citizen in this country. When somebody does that to our police officers, and oh my God, I mean, and again, who's talking about that, John? Do you think the White House is talking about that? Do you think the White House actually came out and said anything that was meaningful or sincere? I mean, oh my God. I mean, they're part of the problem.
General, I think I think that this White House is all right with it. That's what I really think.
Yeah, you know, I tell you, back in 2008. So here's my answer to your point, because I get this a lot from people who they got all these different theories. Back in 2008, the country was looking for change. It was looking for change,
yeah.
And I think that there was a lot of hopefulness that this guy Barack Obama was going to come into office, and he was going to really show not only the United States but the world how much, if you worked hard, you did all the right things, you could achieve and the United States of America. Oh my God, unbelievable, And I thought that, like a lot of people, that there was going to be this great unifying effect that was going to occur. And what happened instead was this incredible disunifying effect in our country, and it's so bad today. But what I tell people, John, what I tell everybody is this is why voting in our country, we're a republic democracy. We're a republic. We are based on sort of one person, one vote. And this is why voting matters. So the fact that he came in 2008, I can understand with all the circumstances of what was going on. And I think that there was some hope that maybe this guy would come in and unify. And actually, he did not. And he started to demonstrate that very clearly in his first 4 years. The shame on us, the shame on America, is that we went and voted him in again. And I think that it wasn't so much that he was voted in. I think it was because people decided not to vote. So a lot of people decided not to vote this last election. So this election, again, when people go into that voting booth, number one, go to vote. Number two, really search your soul and understand when you vote, what are you voting for? I vote for leadership and I vote for America. That's what I vote for. And I don't vote for corruption and criminality and dishonesty. I don't want that in my country. I want an America that's honest with itself. I want somebody who understands America. I want somebody who understands, what it means to be an American. And I want somebody who understands how to be tough but smart at the same time, and not be apologetic and someone who is going to retreat from their word instead of standing on their word.
Yes. Yeah, I probably, it would have helped us a little bit earlier if I'd asked you this question, but what does the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, what do they do? Do they collate from other agencies, or they run their own operations, or what's up with that, in as much as you can tell us?
Yeah, good. No, I appreciate you asking that. It's a great organization. It's like I said, it's it's in 142 countries around the world. It is the country's defense intelligence agency. So the defense intelligence system is made up of all of our services, Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps. And Defense Intelligence Agency is an organization that is supposed to bring our defense intelligence together on behalf of our country to present what it is that we are facing around the world in terms of our adversaries, whether it's China, whether it's Russia, whether it's ISIS. And we look at capabilities, military capabilities. We look at insurgent capabilities. We look at strengths and weaknesses of our enemies. We look at all the kinds of weapon systems, from nuclear weapons all the way down to small arms. So we bring together an awful lot. There's some great people, and they're all over the world, and they're in every single warfighting command. So we have, war fighters in special operations. We have guys over in Europe. We have people over in the Pacific. We have them in Korea. So the Defense Intelligence Agency is made up of a bunch of men and women who are really, in most cases, they're extraordinary servants, and they've been serving a long time. They have deployed to combat. I've served with many of them in combat in different aspects. They go down to, in some cases, we've put them down to the battalion level. So right down with an infantry battalion in some places in Afghanistan and Iraq, because they bring than just the tactical intelligence that might be had by a battalion or a brigade in the battlefield. They will bring a strategic view of what's happening, and then an ability to be able to pull information from the agency itself. So an incredible capability that our nation has that supports our defense system, all of it, the intelligence operations, our logistics, all aspects of what we have in our defense and our military. It's very, very good, and they do a lot of operational things as well around the world.
What do you make of our defense readiness at this point? I mean, we're hearing about drawdowns below World War II levels. We're hearing about all these captains and I want to say majors or maybe colonels, or maybe that spread between those ranks being retired early. They got them walking around in high heel shoes. You got transgender people signing up. Now they're talking about drafting women. I mean, what the hell is going on, General?
Yeah, I mean, what we want out of our military is we want a ready, well-trained warrior class of people who are ready to be, when they're told to go fight and win, they go in there and they're ready to take out the enemy. They're ready to win and crush our enemies. And we have this sort of, what I would call, I'm not even sure it's a word, John, we have this sort of nurturization going on inside of our military. And it has to be careful. I mean, when we start worrying about bathrooms more than worrying about readiness, that's a problem. Now, I will tell you that our Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps are not ready. Our Army Chief of Staff just recently, he talked about how they have the capability to be able to fight ISIS, even though I know that they're not able to unleash all of the capabilities that they have, and there's some frustration there. But they have the capability to fight ISIS, but we are not ready to fight our bigger adversaries, and that's in terms of Russia, China, and North Korea, and even Iran, because of what Iran's capabilities are today with ballistic missiles. So we have an Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines that are smaller than they've been since probably World War II, before World War II, and they are not ready, and they're having to cannibalize some of their equipment to be able to even get it out into the field or to deploy with it. So we have a readiness problem, and that's a huge deal for the next president, because the next president, in many ways, is going to have to deal with the perils of this last 8 years that have been left on the sort of the global stage. So the next president is going to have their hands full to be able to deal with some of this. And one of the things is to basically get our military back up to a level of readiness where we're able to respond to what's already been described by many in our intelligence community as the most complex time that we have faced in the last 75 years. Yet we are allowing our military to atrophy. And this is where I talk about, where I say things like, the president, he's not connected as the commander-in-chief the way he needs to be connected to his military, to our military. And I think that we are spending an inordinate amount of time worrying about the wrong things instead of worrying about our readiness and our levels of training that we must achieve in order to be ready to face some of the perils and some of the enemies that we face today and will around the world for many years to come.
My dad's a Pearl Harbor veteran, USS Maryland at Pearl Harbor, and I was speaking with him one day about my grandfather, his dad. Mm-hmm. And the Caravanners have heard me say this many times, so here it comes again, but I want to run it past you. My grandfather predicted the war with Japan many years before it actually happened. And so I asked my dad, what do you predict? And he got this strange little smile on his face. He says, the thing about the next one is you won't know who you're fighting. Yeah,
he's right.
He is right, isn't he? I was afraid you were going to say that.
He's absolutely right. I mean, so that's on one hand. Now, on the other hand, we know what the problem is. I know what the problem is. I just wrote a book on it that you mentioned up front. So we know what the problem is. What we have to do is we have to clearly define to the American public what this problem is. And this problem is a disease inside of the Islamic ideology. And I refer to it as radical Islamism. And it's not 20,000 or 30,000 guys in Iraq and Syria, or however many we just bombed in Libya. Right. We're talking about a large chunk, potentially tens of thousands, if not in the low millions, of people who are influenced by this radicalization of the Islamic ideology. And we have to face up to this. I mean, so when we defeated Nazism and fascism and imperialism, which was, imperialism is what attacked us in Pearl Harbor, back prior at the beginning of World War II for us. I mean, we defeated all those things, and then we fought communism, and now we're going to fight radical Islamism. And in order to do that, we have to state it. We have to be honest about it. We have to say what it is, and we have to be very conscious that there's an influence going on in our own country. So there's a level of influence that's happening inside of the United States to keep us from being able to say what I just said, that there is a disease inside of Islam. And this is not to go after every Muslim out there and to berate one aspect of one ideology or one race or creed of people. This is about a disease that exists, and I'm telling you, and I write about this in the book. President El-Sisi of Egypt, the president of Egypt, said at the end of 2015, so a little bit more than a year and a half ago, that we need a revolution in Islam. We cannot expect, and this is almost verbatim, we cannot expect the 1.7 billion Muslims on the planet to kill the other 7 billion. We cannot have that. We cannot have that as our message. That's essentially what he said. And he's speaking at a place called the Al-Azhar Mosque in downtown Cairo. And for your listeners, the Al-Azhar Mosque is, so the analogy would be, it's like the Vatican of the Muslim world. And he's there as a leader, as both a Muslim and a practicing member of practicing Islam. He is there saying we need a revolution or a reformation in this religion. That, to me, should have been embraced. Yet we pushed him away. We pushed him away. And now you got to wonder why. And where's the influence to push a guy like that away that's actually saying, hey, we've got a problem. We've got a deep, deep-seated problem in this ideology, which has a disease in it. And we must fix this disease. Otherwise, what we're going to see is we're going to see larger conflict. And we're going to see conflict like we're already beginning to see the indicators of growing inside of the Middle East, where you got an entire Middle East that's struggling to be born. And John, for you, I'm paying for your listeners, I'm paying very close attention to what's happening in Turkey today. So is Turkey a result of the rise of radical Islam? I think that that Turkey is demonstrating something that is part of the whole complex problem that we are facing. And I don't know what the outcome is going to be, because it's still a very fluid situation over in Turkey. But if we don't have a relationship with Turkey right now, which we really don't, we have a terrible relationship with them. And Obama can step up on the TV and say, oh no, me and Erdogan have a great relationship. And I want to say, really? So why did all this happen? And why are they blaming us for this latest attempted coup? So there's a lot of complexity that is happening in the Islamic world, and it's either going to lead to greater conflict, or we're going to be able to suppress it somehow. But in order to do that, we have to get the Islamic world to step up and be counted. That means the kings, presidents, and prime ministers, they must start to talk like President Al-Sisi spoke a year and a half ago. And I'll get off my soapbox here in a second. Let you ask another question. But these attacks that we've seen in Paris, in Orlando, in Germany, in Bangladesh, you name it, where are those leaders in the Muslim world? Where are they? I mean, do you hear them getting on the international television and saying, we condemn these attacks, we condemn this, the way these guys are using, our ideology for their purposes, we condemn this? I don't see it. I haven't seen it. Believe me, I'm paying more attention to them than most people in the world, because I want them to step up and be counted. And that's what I call for in this book. That is going to require new leadership in our country, and that's going to require tough diplomacy from our president on down to our diplomats around the world.
Yeah, I've been sort of putting out that message myself a little bit, from Black Lives Matter to the to the Islamic situation, it's like, where are the good ones? We know that there are good people within any group, but I'm afraid that they're afraid that if they become a little bit too vocal, that there's going to be trouble for them. So they're just, because they are peaceable people, they don't seek conflict, and so they're kind of staying out of it. And I don't think that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's not a good thing. I mean, I go back to something that one of the very senior guys in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia said, and I agree with him, that he said what we want in our country, and the guy said it was the guy that said it was the foreign minister, and he's a good guy. He was the former ambassador here to the United States, and I think he was here when the Iranians tried to actually assassinate him, but here in our country. So, I mean, what he said was, we want our security and we want to be able to practice our faith, and that's okay. I mean, if that's what you want, and that's good. That's fine. What you have to understand is that your security is directly related to your ability to practice your ideology in a way that doesn't impose itself on the rest of the world in a way that's so negative. And frankly, if you say, and I've talked to guys over in the Middle East quite a bit, but senior leaders, businessmen, politicians, and some of the leaders in their defense side, if you want your ideology to not be misinterpreted, which that's just kind of what I get sometimes. Well, the guys that are in ISIS, they are misinterpreting, the Quran, they're misinterpreting Sharia law, they're misinterpreting, Islam. And I say, well, then you know what? You need to correct it. You're at a senior leader level. You need to correct it, and you need to correct their behavior. You need to help the world understand what it is. So that means you got to be more vocal in pronouncing what is right and what is wrong, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, particularly when it comes to internationally accepted norms, behaviors, morals, values. We cannot have a Catholic priest in France a week ago, 85 years old, forced to kneel on his altar and have his head cut off because of Islam. I mean, that's so unbelievable. I mean, I'm disgusted. Just it angers me just sitting here. So when things like that happen, who is in their world, in the Islamic world, who is actually jumping up saying, I condemn this. This is wrong. We are going to fix this problem. We're going to fix it internal. We're going to help you fix it around the world. We cannot have this type of behavior. That's what I want to hear.
Yeah. This, I don't expect you to say something that's going to scare everybody half to death, but I am a little bit concerned about this base at, what is it, Adana, in Sirlik? Yeah, it's the city's Adana, I think it is. What do you think the chances are? How's your crystal ball working today, General? I'm just wondering, is this an opportunity for ISIS to get his hands on some little nukes, maybe if they swarm that base, since Erdogan has declared himself the leader of the whole Muslim world? I mean, I'm just wondering where this could go, worst case scenario.
Yeah, I mean, our chairman, our military chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Joe Dunford, I understand arrived there yesterday, and I think that was really smart that he did that, because it showed, that, hey, this is, we at a leader level, and particularly our military guy, I wish that it had been more, somebody more that would have done something different to show, that we mean business. But at least he went over there and landed on the tarmac and got out of his plane and demonstrated that, hey, this is, we're resolved to making sure that we take care of the safety of our people overseas. And this is a really interesting issue, because right now the noise coming out of Turkey, the message coming out of Turkey is that the United States is to blame for this attempted coup attempt that happened a week or so ago now, and they're essentially, what I get is that they're holding hostage, our base over there, and we can't have that. This gets back to, respect, having respect around the world, having respect from somebody who is a member of NATO. I mean, Turkey is a member of NATO. They are not a member of the European Union. They're a member of NATO. And so for Turkey to act like they're acting with the United States of America says something to me, and certainly should say something to others who are paying attention, that there is such a level of disrespect for the United States of America right now, where they're accusing us of having tried to, support this coup attempt. And to me, I mean, am I concerned about it? I'm absolutely concerned about it. Do I think that they're about to take the base over? I doubt it. I seriously doubt it. But there's going to have to be much stronger conversation that we're going to have. And I hope that our military, commander that's over there right now, Joe Dunford, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, I hope he has that conversation. If he is not able to talk to Erdogan, then we got a problem. We got a problem because this is about, this is president to president, and what has to be resolved, and it needs to be resolved immediately.
You got to go at 5 minutes still, so we got less than a minute for you to answer this question. And thank you so much for being on the program. And that is, what's the danger level with this unchecked immigration? We put troops on the border, build a wall. Can we control this thing, or what?
Yeah, I think that we have to. I think that what we have to do is we have to understand where these people. I mean, this president wants 100,000 refugees to come in from Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan, and his own people are telling him we can't vet them all. We can't do the effective enough job to be able to vet them. So we have to slow this whole thing down and figure out what it is that we want to do. And this is all part of a much larger strategic effort that we must think our way through in order to resolve this problem of this rise of radical Islamism globally. So this is beyond, the Mexicans who cross our border to come in to help out our produce. This is, to pick produce. I mean, this is about making sure that our country is secure and the people of our country, the American citizens, are safe in their homes. That's what this is about.
Gotcha. I hope that at FlynnIntelGroup.com, can we find out your speaking schedule there?
Yeah, we will post some of it on there. Absolutely. We sure will. And thanks so much for having me, John B. Wells. And thanks to your listeners. You got a great show.
Thank you, sir. God bless.
Absolutely.
Lieutenant General Michael T. Flynn, everybody. What a